Hey everyone, welcome to this explainer. You know, if you're the kind of focused learner who just wants to cut through the noise and get straight to the facts, well, you are exactly where you need to be. Today, we're finally dismantling the 60-year-old Dyatlov Pass enigma. And we're not doing it with ghost stories, alien conspiracies, or internet urban legends. No, we're breaking this infamous cold case wide open using hard science, forensic documents, and modern research.
Okay, let's dive into this. Here's the terrifying question that has literally fueled decades of wild speculation and deep internet rabbit holes. What could possibly force a group of seasoned, hardcore survivalists to slash their way out of their own shelter, leave their crucial cold weather gear behind, and sprint into a -49-degree pitch-black blizzard? I mean, it's the ultimate locked room mystery, just set out in the vast, unforgiving wilderness of the Soviet Union.
Section 1. The Doomed Expedition.
So to really wrap our heads around this investigation, we first need to look at who these victims were and why on earth they were out in the brutal Ural Mountains in the dead of winter. Look, these weren't amateurs taking a casual weekend hike. This expedition was put together in early 1959 by a brilliant 23-year-old radio engineering student named Igor Dyatlov. Their goal? To earn their Grade 3 hiking certification, which was the highest you could get in the Soviet Union. We're talking a grueling 190-mile ski trek. Fast forward to February 1st. They hit foul weather and massive winds. But Igor, wanting to preserve the altitude they'd worked so hard for, makes a fateful decision. He decides to pitch their tent right on the open slope of Mount Kholets-Yakul, ironically, a name that translates to Dead Mountain in the local Mansi language. By February 12th, the telegram announcing their safe return never arrived, and, well, the panic set in.
Now, 10 hikers actually started this journey, but the number we're really focusing on is 9. These are brilliant, incredibly fit students from the Ural Polytechnic Institute, along with one rugged 38-year-old World War II veteran named Semyon. So why 9? Well, on January 28th, one hiker, Yuri Yudin, had to turn back because of severe joint pain and sciatica. Honestly, it was a crushing disappointment for him at the time, but that single decision is the exact reason he became the sole survivor of the entire expedition.
Section 2. A Grim Discovery.
When the family's mounting panic finally pushed the university and military to step in, search parties headed out into these totally harsh, whiteout conditions. And what they eventually found? Well, it shifted this right from a missing persons case into one of the most chilling crime scenes of the 20th century. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the baffling distribution of clues the searchers found. The tent was collapsed, short, but all their gear was just neatly left behind. And more importantly, the footprints leading away, they showed the group didn't flee in some wild, screaming frenzy. They actually walked away deliberately, in single file. Down by a cedar tree, searchers found 2 bodies stripped to their underwear next to a makeshift fire. 3 more bodies were frozen on the slope, facing the tent, almost like they were trying to crawl back. And finally, months later, 4 more bodies were discovered buried 13 feet deep in a ravine.
It was really those last 4 bodies in the ravine that turned this mystery completely on its head. The autopsy revealed just horrifying internal injuries. Ludmila and Semyon had completely crushed ribs. Nikola suffered a massively fractured skull. To put that into perspective, the medical examiner stated the sheer force required to do that kind of damage was equivalent to a violent car crash. Yet, and here's the crazy part, there were 0 external open wounds or skin tears from all that trauma. On top of that, Ludmila was missing her tongue and eyes, and Alexander was found wearing clothing laced with radioactive dust. Talk about a puzzle, right?
Section 3. Myths and False Leads. You can totally see how a crime scene this bizarre birthed over 6 decades of wild theories. Murder, monsters, cover-ups, you name it. But we're going to systematically debunk the biggest myths right now using the actual declassified case files. Let's tackle the whole animal or Yeti attack theory first. A lot of people naturally assumed a wild beast chased him out. But a really brilliant, simple observation by a local seamstress at the police station changed everything. She proved the cuts on the tent were made from the inside. The hikers slashed their own way out. That fact alone completely invalidates any idea of a Yeti or some outside animal trying to get in.
Next up, we have the secret military weapons test theory. This one was heavily spurred by those crushed bones and the radioactive clothing. But think about it. If a massive explosion crushed their ribs, the surrounding forest would have been totally flattened. But the trees? They were entirely untouched. And the radiation? It was strictly beta radiation. True nuclear fallout would emit alpha, beta, and gamma rays. That beta dust likely just came from natural radon daughters in the uranium-rich Ural Mountains, or honestly, simply from the fact that Alexander and Georgi literally worked at classified nuclear facilities. It really is that simple.
Okay, but what about the KGB cover-up, or the glowing orbs seen in the sky? Well, yes, the Soviet Union did indeed lock down the area, but in the highly paranoid Cold War era, closing off an unexplained disaster zone for sanitary reasons was just standard procedure. It wasn't some grand conspiracy. And those mysterious glowing orbs? Declassified documents confirmed they were distant Soviet R-7 missile tests happening way out at the Baikonur and Plesetsk ranges. They looked super striking from afar for sure, but they were completely harmless to our hikers.
Section 4. The scientific truth. So, the crucial point is that when we strip away the aliens, the Yetis, and the KGB assassins, we are left staring at the raw, unfeeling mountain.
Let's look at the incredible scientific expeditions from 2019 and 2021 that finally solved this case. The very first missing piece of the puzzle here is katabatic winds. If you aren't familiar, these are basically hurricane-like winds that happen when frigid, high-altitude air slides rapidly down a mountain slope. The research teams in 2019 retracing the exact route experienced this weather firsthand. These terrifying winds likely plummeted the ambient temperature that night down to anywhere between -49 and -76 degrees Fahrenheit. That creates an absolute, instant, desperate survival situation.
But here's the thing. Katabatic winds alone don't crush ribs. A truly groundbreaking 2021 snow modeling study revealed the true killer. It was a delayed, localized slab avalanche. Let's walk through this sequence. First, the hikers cut into a 28-degree slope to create a flat, wind-protected platform for their tent. As the night progressed, those katabatic winds continuously packed heavy, freezing snow right above their shelter. Then, between 7 to 13 hours later, the buried weak layer just snapped. A solid block of snow slid directly onto the tent, crushing it with an immense downward force right against the hard wooden skis they'd laid on the floor for insulation.
Now you have to understand, this isn't your typical Hollywood powder avalanche. A slab avalanche is localized and subtle. It basically slides a short distance and compacts instantly. And this perfectly explains the car crash style internal trauma, the crushed ribs and the fractured skulls, without generating some massive debris field or sweeping all their gear down the mountain. Just like that, the mystery of the blunt force trauma was finally solved.
Section 5. The final night.
With the actual science laid out, we can finally reconstruct their final horrifying hours. When we piece together the evidence, what emerges is definitely not a story of madness or panic. It's a story of immense bravery, logic, and self-sacrifice. And this brilliantly illustrates the sheer professionalism of the Dyatlov group. When that massive snow slab hit, pinning them in the pitch dark and critically injuring 4 members, they didn't panic blindly. They did exactly what their training taught them to do. They cut themselves out of the collapsed canvas to escape suffocating, and they immediately evacuated the area to avoid a secondary avalanche strike. Abandoning the tent and walking down in a disciplined, single file to the tree line wasn't madness. It was strict, textbook survival protocol.
Down at the tree line, they fought a desperate, unimaginable battle against -49-degree temperatures. They actually managed to build a fire under a cedar tree. They bravely moved these severely internally injured members down into a ravine to build a makeshift snow den out of the wind. And as members began to succumb to the cold by the fire, the survivors made the incredibly grim but pragmatic choice to strip clothes from the fallen just to keep the injured alive. Meanwhile, Igor and 2 others made a heroic but ultimately doomed attempt to literally crawl back up the mountain to get supplies from the tent.
Ultimately, the sheer power of the cold won out. Hypothermia claimed them all. And what about those most sensational, ghoulish details everyone talks about? The missing tongues and eyes. Guys, it wasn't KGB torture. Those 4 hikers lay dead in a melting creek bed for months. It was simply the result of natural decomposition, water exposure, and local natural scavengers taking their course before the spring thaw arrived.
As one researcher noted, these were people caught in something that was beyond their control, fighting for survival against a compelling natural force. And honestly, we really most remember them not as characters in some spooky internet myth, but as brilliant, resilient human beings who fought tooth and nail for their friends against absolutely impossible odds.
So, we've debunked the myths. We know the science. The 60-year-old mystery is officially solved. But you have to ask yourself, does knowing the unfeeling mechanical physics of a mountain make the tragic loss of these 9 incredible lives any less haunting? Sometimes the truth isn't supernatural at all. It's just a terrifying reminder of nature's sheer impersonal power. Thank you for joining me on this explainer. Keep questioning, keep learning, and I'll catch you next time.